Well, because I couldn't think of anything better to make a video for you for, this is what I decided on. Yeah. The solar panels as a whole, all 18 of them, is called an array. The array is divided into two sections, the upper section, the upper 9 panels, and the lower 9 panels. Now each half has 3 strings of solar panels. This solar panel and those 2 solar panels is a string. These 2 solar panels and that solar panel is a string, and this solar panel and those 2 solar panels is a string. So 1 string, 2 strings, 3 strings, 4, 5, and 6 strings. Each string is connected together. These 3 are connected together, connected together, connected together 6 times. Now, to make a string of solar panels, it's a simple matter of just connecting the positive of one panel to the negative of the next, and then the positive of that one to the negative of the next one, and then on the ends you have a positive lead and a negative lead. So you have a positive and a negative. Your negative lead goes to the negative bus bar. The positive lead goes to the circuit breaker and the combiner box. So that the lower 9 panels are connected to or are feeding charge controller number 1, and the upper 9 panels, those 3 strings, are feeding charge controller number 2. So each string has a negative and a positive wire. That would be here. And so here we go. Here's the 2 wires that are going that way, and that's string number 1. String number 2 are these 2 panels and that one, and then string number 3 is there. So they each have 2 wires coming over, and they're all going down this center column. So there's 12 wires, 6 positive, 6 negative from each of the 6 strings. Well, you know, through the tube, down the tube, over to about where the garbage can is, right back here, and then angles over and goes up into the combiner box. So each of the positive wires from each of the strings, this would be, there's 4 stripes, so that's string number 4, goes into this circuit breaker. So if you want to cut off that string for some reason, to work on it, disconnect it, whatever, you would throw the breaker to that one. And this is number 5 and number 6. 4, 3, 2, 1. All the negative ones go onto the negative bus bar. And then these first 3 breakers, string 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, these 3 are connected to that plate. So all of the voltages, all the amperage are added up. This string, and this string are added together and are on that one plate, which serves number 1 charge controller. That plate, same thing, services number 2 charge controller. When connecting 3 solar panels together to get a string, they're connected together in series, which means that we're going to add the voltage together. So 37.6 volts times 3 is 112.8 volts, but the amps are going to stay the same. So the best we could hope to see is 8.27 amps and 118 or whatever voltage that was. And that's under prime conditions. i.e. brand new solar panels, clean, squeaky clean, no dirt, no bird poop. Yeah. So right now I have full sun on the solar panels. No obstruction whatsoever. I'm going to shut off the breakers and go through each breaker, and you can see I got 6.7 amps, 6 point, you know, seven and a quarter, seven, so roughly just short of 7 amps. 7 times 6 is 42 amps I'm generating right now. The solar panels are generating 42 amps ish, maybe 38, 35, something like that, if we added them all up together. So off of the number 1 plate we're getting roughly 113 volts. Off of the number 2 plate we're getting 103.5 volts, 104 volts. So 113 and 104 volts. Let's recap. We have a solar array. The lower half, which is comprised of 3 strings, 1, 2, and 3, which are connected to circuit breakers 1, 2, and 3 in the combiner box, which feeds charge controller number 1. The upper half, which is comprised of strings 4, 5, and 6, feed circuit breakers 4, 5, and 6 in the combiner box, which feeds charge controller number 2. So the combined amperage of strings 1, 2, and 3 are coming down this wire, 4, 5, and 6 are coming down this wire, and then we have the 2 negative wires coming off the bus bar, and they go under there through to the inside of the box, run down here. 1 negative goes into there, 1 positive goes into there, and then a negative and a positive go into there. Then they come out of here, and the positive goes to the positive bus bar, the negative goes to the negative bus bar, and then the negative cable goes to the shunt, which is controlling the battery monitor, which shows the state of charge and what have you, into then from there into the negative battery terminal, and from the positive bus bar goes to the damn thing. Well, anyway, there's a 250 amp type something or other fuse in there, and then goes to the positive battery cable here. Also from the positive bus bar, the cable goes into the house, and also from the negative bus bar into the house. Both of those go directly to the inverter. And this cable here from the shunt goes into the house for the battery monitor display. I have 8 6-volt batteries, all connected in series, which is positive to negative, all the way around. 6 times 8 is 48 volts. So this is a 48 volt bank system. Each individual battery, when these were new and fully charged, I wrote down the voltage of each individual battery on there, and they should all be within 0.3 volts. Now, the battery monitor has this wire on here which is connected to the 4th battery, and it's reading the voltage, the midpoint voltage between these first 4 batteries and the second 4 batteries. And if it deviates by, I think the book says 3%, that's going to tell you that you might have a problem with either one of these 4 batteries or one of those 4 batteries. So you would want to, if that's deviating more than 3%, which is, like 0.5 volts or something like that, you would want to come and individually check the voltage of each battery to see if one is reading either low or high, to see if there's some possible problem with one of them that either needs replacing or something. Now a bit about these displays for the solar charge controllers. The voltage of the battery bank is 58.3 volts. It'll say the same thing on both of them. Now the battery temperature is 66 degrees. This solar charge controller is creating, or is allowing, 480 watts to go into the batteries, along with 8.5 amps. This one is only putting in 2.5 or so amps into the battery. So in essence, and if you add them together, 8, 9, 10, that's 11 amps. And if we look on my phone, it only says 6.83 amps. So that's almost 7, 8, 9, so 1, 2, 3. So I'm using in the house, somehow, somewhere, about 4 amps. So that's the difference between the battery monitor and the charge controllers. The charge controllers, if you add the two together, tell you what's going into the battery. The phone, the battery monitor, tells you the difference between what's going into the battery and what you're using, if that makes sense. Now, the absorb, it says absorb. I think it says MPPT if it's not absorbing. When it gets to 58 volts, sometimes 59, I've even seen it go to 60, then it starts absorbing, which means that the charge controller is holding back some of this power, because it's above 80% state of charge. The batteries are 80% charged, so it starts holding it back. Once that is absorbing for, I believe the book says 3 hours, it'll go to float charge, and I'm not sure what the float voltage is, or the amps, I should say, how many amps it puts in there when it's floating. But it doesn't float very often, because we're always using power to some degree. I've only seen it float a couple of times. So that's what's going on with this thing. And these buttons, and up and down and in and out and around, it can show you a bunch of other things what's going on with the system, but I just don't need to ever look at that, because it's pertinent and it matters, but not that much. If I was having some kind of issue, I might go and look at that, but you play around with it if you want. Don't change the settings. So okay, bye. Batteries are real finicky on how they need to be charged, and that is the purpose of the charge controllers. They give the batteries the amount of amps and voltage depending upon their state of charge. There is a bulk charge when the batteries are below somewhere around 80%. Then there's an absorption charge when the batteries are roughly 80%. When this voltage goes up to about 58 volts, that's when the absorption charge will kick in and start lowering the voltage, or the amperage. It starts lowering that amperage down so it doesn't overcharge the batteries. And the specs for the charging, the bulk charge, is between 7.2 and 7.35 volts. So I took the average of those two and then multiplied it by 2, because these are 6-volt batteries, to get the 12-volt figure. And I set the dip switches inside each charge controller for those specs. And also there's a float charge, which is 6.8, I believe that is, to 6.9 volts. And I took the average, multiplied it by 2, and I set the dip switches for that. So when the batteries are below somewhere around 80% and below 58 volts, the charge controllers will put as much amps and voltage in there as the solar panels can deliver. But once it gets to 58 volts, once this whole bank gets to 58 volts, it starts curbing the amount of amps and voltage that are going into the batteries so they don't overcharge them. Now you have to remember that these are two totally separate systems, grid power and solar power. They're completely separated, not physically touching at all, anywhere. They can't touch because then they would be on at the same time possibly. That's why this device is in here. So you could either be solar power, turn it off, or go to grid power, but you can't have them both on at the same time. Now this is the refrigerator, which is on. This is grid power, this is solar power, separated. If I were to, fridge is on, if I were to shut this breaker off, fridge is still on because I'm running on solar power. So if you want to work on that, like that outlet for the fridge, you can't shut this off because it's still energized because I'm not on grid power, I'm on solar power. If I wanted to shut the fridge off, I would have to shut it off here, and I'm pretty sure this is the one. All right, off. Now if I push this down onto grid power, and turn the breaker on grid power, the fridge will come back on. Now I can shut the breaker off grid power and it'll go off. But if I want to go back to solar power, okay, so grid power while solar power is on does nothing. It's off. Come on, where's my light? There it is. So remember that. If you're on solar power, this panel is no good. It don't work. It don't matter if things are on or not. If you turn this off and expect the fridge to go off and work on that outlet, it ain't going to happen. You have to turn it off here. So never trust this thing. Even if I turn that main off, now this whole panel is dead. It doesn't matter. Everything is still on. So because I'm on solar right now, if I were to turn all of these off, well, then I'd have that. Then I'd have nothing still. But if I put all of these online, then this will be activated. If all of these were online, grid power, this panel is active now. Now these breakers will work. But if all of these are on solar power, this is basically dead. I mean, so don't use this panel to shut shit off and expect it to be off, because it ain't happening. Remember that. This is the main source of everything. In fact, you could turn this off, and you could also throw this breaker and the refrigerator would go off into all the various circuits. The stove, and everything is marked on here, but not so much in that one. So, okay, that's it. I hope you learned something. 100% battery state of charge is a beautiful thing. Well, in a nutshell, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. ILYVMYK. Bye.